great ideas for teaching students. And today, we are so happy to have Kristin, Hadley, and Conlin, who are here to share some great teaching ideas with us. And I think everybody has signed in, but in the event that you snuck by me, sign in before you leave, and also be sure that you've got a name on your paper, or a name on a piece of paper in here before the end, so that when we have our drawing, you can be one of the people who are eligible to win prizes and more prizes. Okay, so I'm going to turn the time over to our illustrious presenters.
Thank you, Colleen. I'm the Gering part and she's the Kristin part, by the way. And we're going to talk a little bit about not just active engagement, which helps students to learn better, but some ways of using some of these as formative assessment techniques. So let's look at this. First of all, are you ready?
Because Jerry never ever sits, and so a lot of our active engagement is going to be involved getting up and moving. So you have to. We're going to do a human Likert scale. You may not have noticed.
Strongly disagree, but strongly
agree. So you're going to come up here and you're going to stand where your opinion is, to express your opinion.
And here's the first one you get to express.
Sorry.
And it's okay to chew while you're there. So bring your yummies with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, you don't even have to explain what a Likert scale is. They know they don't have to get one end or the other. They can be somewhere in the middle, and that's cool. I like it. Okay. It's good. But these people over here will let you help us a lot because you seem to know what active engagement strategies are. Okay. Here's the next thing. You can't see it. I understand the difference between formative assessment and other assessments.
I did a little better on that.
And notice you're not being graded. We're just taking a survey. Okay. Kristin, read the next one. Where are you?
Active formative assessment is important for adult learners.
Those are the ones
This
like
is your
teach here.
opinion.
That's an opinion. There needs to be a place for, I have no clue. I don't agree. Yeah, just you go right in the middle. Or is it only important for like 8-year-olds, boys?
8-year-old boys. I think there's one more. Adult learners will positively respond to active formative assessment.
Just a little. It is true that sometimes people are like, you have to stand up.
You and I are.
We are all the whole day long.
Does
Does that give us an idea?
That does.
All right, good. You can sit down.
Thank you.
That was hard work. Why did I see the sweat on your brow?
No, you're one of those adult learners. Hold my arms and resist.
Now, Jerry and I signed up for the same book group, and it was...
Which one?
7. It's got a big 7 on it.
Something about how we learn?
How learning works.
Principles about how
learning works.
How learning works. Okay.
We're excited. It is an awesome book.
So it's
I
a
don't
great...
think anybody
yeah.
in here's in it.
So...
I'm doing some about animals eating them and loving them. I don't remember what it is. Some you eat, some you pet. I don't know. What is it?
I am in a group of nursing that chose that book.
I just started reading it, and I've just been highlighting it because it's got some great quotes. And this was one of the quotes just in the beginning of the first chapter. It says, learning results from what the ignore the S. What the student does and thinks, and only from what the student does and thinks. The teacher can advance learning only by influencing what the student does to learn. I remember when I was, when my kids were in, I think it was junior high, and I went to a parent-teacher conference for my son, who was a somewhat difficult child at school. And I said to the teacher, my son was with me, I said, well, did you learn that? We were talking about something that he had done poorly on. And the teacher said, well, I don't know if he learned it, but I taught it. And I thought to myself, well, it doesn't really matter if you just spewed it out there and hope it landed on somebody's head. It's not good enough to actually engage students. Next slide. So learning, and this is also out of that 7 principles book, Learning is a process. We can only infer that it has occurred from what students do, from their products and performances. Learning is also a change, and sometimes there's a lot of resistance to that change. There's a lot of misconceptions that are very pervasive. And learning is not done something to students, but rather something students do themselves. They have to be the one that makes that change. And a lot of times with my students, I tell them, I teach a methods course, and they have to write a lesson plan and explain how they're going to do this and this and this in the instruction. And they're like, well, regular teachers don't do this. Well, we're out of the schools. Those teachers don't have 5-page lesson plans. It's like, it's because they're experienced. They can teach in their heads, just like you and I, when we read a book, usually we don't read out loud. But a first grader needs to read out loud so others can hear him and see what they're doing. So I tell them, this lesson plan you're writing is an example of you teaching out loud, because I can't see in your head and see if the learning has occurred.
So what is active engagement? Well, it's kind of like what we just did. You had to actually do something to show that you were engaged in the learning. You had to stand here or there or somewhere in between. But it is a process where students have actual interested, engaged involvement in their learning. And boy, do they respond. I'm not supposed to tell them that. So they're supposed to discover for themselves that students will learn that, right? Okay. I'm sorry. I've jumped the gun. Go ahead, Kristin.
So,
wait a minute. Do you mean your slides were in reverse order, or you?
No,
you're
I just
starting to
opened
talk?
my mouth and shouldn't have.
Okay.
so when students are learning, they have to do things. They can't just listen. Now, some of you may think, God, I learned really great by listening. I love a great lecture. You know, and sometimes a really interesting lecture can be very enlightening.
Before you go on, who fits into that boat?
An enlightening lecture.
Just sitting and listening is your preferred way of learning information.
Okay, that's about a third. Okay, I'm sorry, keep going.
No, that's fine. But if you want to increase the learning for the rest of the students, you need to have some sort of students doing things with what they're hearing. So hearing and doing something and applying it in the context. So reading, writing, and going forth that way.
And it's not just good to do it once like we did at the beginning. It's got to be consistent throughout the learning process. They have to be, not only do they do it often, but they have to be engaged in higher order thinking skills, and maybe you're agreeing with Bloom's taxonomy. Those higher order thinking skills are making them think, analyze, synthesize, and then it makes sense to them rather than just to recite facts and figures. It really does help them to get this into their head.
So when this happens, then there is greater opportunity for students to be able to transfer the learning into new settings and to apply it in other ways.
And that's of course what we want, because they're never going to be sitting in a desk and using this skill at another time. They're just learning it here. Okay, so what do we know? Physics students were taught with active engagement, and they retained the content longer, and than those that just sat and listened, like some of you said, you prefer that. But if you get them busy, get them actively engaged, they're going to retain that better.
So that was the active engagement part. Formative assessment is their techniques that teachers use to see if students are getting it. That's kind of a quick definition. So while you're teaching, it's something you do to say, how's this going over? How many people are understanding? So it's some way of you finding out during the instruction. Because sometimes you shift gears based on that formative assessment feedback you get. And sometimes it's blank stares. Blank stares are a form of formative assessment for you as the instructor to say, I can see that this is going right over everyone's head. And then you pull back and do something different to try to help them understand. So it's during the instruction, and formative assessment should have very low stakes, because formative assessment isn't for grading the students. Formative assessment is feedback for the instructor to know what changes need to be made in the instruction, whether it's changes that occur for the next time you meet with the students or changes that occur right then because of that formative assessment you received.
So why is it so important for students to do this? She just talked about why it's important for teachers, but why would students need formative assessments and feedback that way? What do you think? Renica? Good job.
They they need to be either validated if they're getting it or not, one way or the other.
Okay, great. Go
And
ahead.
feel safe to express that.
Okay, thanks, Marilee. Bob, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, when we did the blended learning project last year, we talked a lot about formative assessment. And the focus wasn't so much on doing the assessment during the teaching process, but rather doing formative assessment at the very beginning, so before they come to the classroom.
Oh.
And I found that really has a transformative effect because it really forces the students to actually be looking at the materials before they come to the class. And even if they're not understanding it fully, they at least have some familiarity
Okay.
and helps them learn once you get into the classroom. So you're not starting from ground zero.
And it helps you understand where the prior knowledge is in that case.
Sylvia, what do you want to follow with?
I was just gonna say, I'm one of those who likes to sit and listen to a lecture, and then you think you've learned something, you think you know it, but when push comes to shove, a lot of times you haven't, and you go to explain it to somebody else or tell someone, well, I was, and I think, okay, yeah, so if you're doing formative sense, it's kind of holding your feet to the fire. I mean, it's showing you how much you really have or haven't.
Okay. And that was a cool formative assessment strategy you just said, where you have to turn and tell somebody about it. Yeah, what do you call that?
Turn and tell.
She made that up. That's
No,
not-
it's in books. I can find books that say turn and talk is what it's called. Turn and talk. But it's a cooperative learning strategy, actually. Turn and talk, so you turn to your shoulder partner or your table partner or something like that. Turn and talk about what you understand, what they understand.
I thought you were going to say that. But that's,
No, but that's,
but I'm going to use that
Pair
now.
share is
Okay,
another
that's what
one.
I was going to say. Okay, so again, what is formative? When is it used? Bob just talked about using it before they ever come to class, and that would be good. It could be done during the time you're doing lectures or you're doing activities, or it could be done at the end.
like as an exit ticket for you to change instruction coming in the next day.
Oh, we've got an example of that later on.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so how's it going to help students? You've given some ideas. Here are some, it makes them responsible for their own learning. That's the part I like, and Bob, you kind of mentioned that in yours. It really, at least according to Popham, it doubles the speed of student learning if there are these formative assessments that are going on during the time that you have your class.
And Popham is a big assessment guru. I mean, he writes some of the most well-known books in assessment, and the focus is on how much more students learn when they have this formative assessment. So it's not just for the teacher, but it's for the student to metacognitively consider, what do I really know, and how is it organized in my brain? Is there holes in my understanding that I need to address?
Okay. How does it help the teachers? I think we've talked about all of these. Which of your students are struggling, and which area are your students struggling? And that's where I'm going to say, okay, reverse, do it again, do it in a different language, do it in a different way, because we want to make sure we hit the student learning, whatever they happen to be on their spectrum, whether it's the listening, or whether it's verbal, or whether it's have to get up and move in order to learn.
Rather than just one more time, slower and louder.
Yeah.
You know, differentiate it in a different way.
Slower and louder. Okay, so Kristin mentioned metacognitive strategies, such as how am I thinking? Well, you mentioned them already.
Knowledge monitoring, which is the idea of what do I really know? And that is, there are some studies where students who, I'm not sure if we have this here, but it was a study I read where some students, and these were college level students, read a text and they just underlined important words, you know, highlighted important words. I remember doing that in college. Oh, I'm going to read this chapter and I'm going to highlight everything that's important. So that's one condition. And the other condition was students wrote questions in the book. So as they read, they wrote questions they had. And the learning for the students who wrote question, which is their knowledge monitoring, was much greater than the students who just underlined. Because they were thinking about, what do I understand and what don't I understand in regards to this topic?
I'm going to try that. I like that.
That's a good one.
I didn't think about that one. Okay, so here's some of the questions that students might be thinking of as a form of metacognition. And maybe these are some of the questions that you might encourage your students to use while they're not just underlining words, but writing in the margins of their books. for their ebooks or however they happen to have it. And I always ask my students this, before you turn in an assignment, what is it that you really know, what is it that you really don't know? Because I'm the one to answer your questions, but if you don't even know what they are, think about what those questions are.
You know, I was thinking about that very last question with a colleague, and I was talking about students who don't read the rubrics. Well, we're really big on rubrics. We've got a rubric for practically everything. Every assignment I have has a rubric, and I remember saying to her, it's so frustrating when I prepare this stuff and students don't even look at it. They don't read the rubric. And what she was saying was, Kristin, you've got to understand that a poorer student, that never occurs to them to read the rubric. Because to me, I would think, everybody reads a rubric. You got something there that says exactly what you should include. Everyone would look at that. But students who are not well advanced metacognitively don't even consider that as a part of their completion of the assignment. So they're not pulling it off. They're not pulling it off and reading through it and saying, oh, I'm going to be graded on this criteria and this criteria and this criteria. This was actually a really new idea to me. I had never thought that some students would never consider the rubric. Because I had one class where I had an assignment that they did 4 times. It was a student interview, so they had to interview 4 different students, and they were turned in across the semester. So, you know, they could take the feedback from the first one to improve the second one. Student was making the same error every time. And I was like, did you look at what I said on the first time? Did you give me any comments? Did you look at the rubric? You know, and it's just that a student is poor metacognitively, it doesn't even occur to them. So sometimes we have to be very explicit of, let's look at the rubric together and try. And so this semester, I printed out the rubrics, I got them some samples, we went through and rated the samples based on the rubric, so they would know very clearly, there's a rubric. It tells you what to include.
I like that strategy. Go over some former ones using the rubric so they catch on with the rubric. I think it's that one too.
Yeah, I asked some students in previous semesters, can I use yours as an example? So I have a number of
That's a
samples.
cool active engagement idea. We didn't write it here, but it was still good. Okay. All right, pull out your phones, please. And here's a question for you. Would you please
If you don't have one,
answer?
you'll have to answer it
Students
again.
retain more through lecture than through direct involvement in active learning. This is where you text, and you text this if it's true, you text this if it's false.
So like the phone number place is 37607. And then if you think it's true, you type in those numbers in the body of your text. This is an app called Poll Everywhere. Not an app, it's a website. You create the questions on the website and you download Poll Everywhere onto your computer. And then it actually comes up as a tab in PowerPoint where you can just add in the questions.
Here, Molly, do your vote on my phone. Don't take my credit cards out of there.
So one person has responded so far.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna do
Yeah,
here.
this is new to me.
So go to your texting
Here.
function on your
Put
phone.
the number
The
37607.
phone
I got no
number
numbers.
is 37607, and then in the
Okay,
body
I got
you
numbers,
put that,
Molly.
those
So
digits.
it's like searching,
This will be fine.
37607?
No,
You
you
just
just put
that
that
in.
in.
No,
number. That's the
as though that
recipient
were a
number.
phone number.
As if it were a phone
I
number.
did that and it told me it was the wrong number.
Oh, it'll be
Text.
text.
Return.
You're on call.
And that'll bring you down here. Now you put in
I
whatever
hear what
number
you're
you
saying.
want there.
But it's not, so I'm missing some piece of
Right
information.
there, that. Then
Wait just a second, something happened. Can I
So
touch
put
So
it?
that's where I put the number.
37607.
Now put in the word. Oh, this is.
Alright.
And you could, so this is a great formative assessment strategy. There were no names associated with this, but if you just had like interspersed in your, if you're doing a lecture or something and you want to just see if they're understanding, you can put a question up here, students respond, and you can evaluate where to go from there.
So if you have 25 students in your class and 20 of them say false and only 5 say true, those students who said true might reconsider, perhaps I don't get it yet. Perhaps I need to study, perhaps I should have read my textbook before I came. All sorts of things the students could come up with when they have this kind of a response. Are you done yet, Molly?
Well, I did, and it told me the poll was closed.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. We'll try it again.
It's okay, we have another one.
It could be that
So
I
we get
have used that
practice.
phone to answer this question before.
Okay.
Okay, let's try another one. Formative assessment is done at the end of a unit of study. It helps students identify how well they've mastered the objectives. It's useful to teachers, but not to students, or may triple the speed of student learning. Answer to 37607, one of these numbers.
So now that you're still in 37607, you can just put in the numbers.
Last time I did put the numbers up here.
And you'll look at, right now, we just have one, and so it's making the bar all the way. But if we had two, then the one bars get shorter and so forth. Oh, see, just like it just did. We have a 2 and a 1 and 1. Now, this is off of Jerry's Poll Everywhere account. But the accounts are free on Poll Everywhere. The download is free. There must be ads somewhere. I don't know.
Have we got enough
Make it
answers
so
up
it's
there
all free.
yet? We've got
There's a subscription.
4.
Oh, you can, so it's more powerful?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can have more options, more questions, more recipients.
And more responses.
Yes,
I think
so
this is a
you
30 responses free.
Kind of like a survey monkey, you can only ask
Yeah.
100
exactly.
people 10 questions
Okay.
for free.
Exactly.
Well, can we see where we're going? And as a teacher, I can look at there and say, I can see where I need to reteach. Or as a student, you can say, I added that just to pretend. Molly, you can't use it because I already used it. Okay, here's your next question. Metacognitive strategies include knowledge monitoring questions such as, you're going to, this is your number again, you're going to do this number plus the word, that was my number, my word, but give us a word. Such
So-
as what?
So like
Metacognitive
Jerry put
strategies.
in the number, when she put in the word play, she put in 314-379 space play.
3, 4, no, I did 2,
2,
1,
1, 4.
Oh, that thing right there.
Doing the word
The numbers
cloud.
that I can't read, yeah, I teach math.
And then we put a word
And
in.
And then you put in a word.
Any word that is a metacognitive strategy, include knowledge monitoring questions such as,
Oh,
I'll look at you cheating.
You could have more than one word. You
That's
could
true.
have a phrase, a sentence. You could maybe even do it more than once. I don't know what it like.
problem with typing.
This, when Jerry created this question, she put in that she wanted the responses in a, because it was pop quiz, so put them in a separate group. I wonder if you put quotes, if it would say
I
pop
bet
quiz.
quotes might help.
Like if you wanted it to stay together. If you had a large classroom and students were putting in the same word, the word gets bigger. Because she put in to poll everywhere to have the response in a word cloud. With 4 or 5 responses, we're probably not going to see that in this particular sample, but. Okay, our pop quiz, the quotes didn't help.
No, that didn't.
Good, you got pop quiz. So,
Yeah, it's telling me the keyword.
although
cannot
it's
be
not making
found.
the word bigger, so apparently my
So it doesn't want.
supposition was wrong.
But the,
But
they
telling
look
me
cute
that it
up
won't
there,
accept
don't they?
that keyword
Quotation
words either.
things in there.
What was your
Like
word?
mine.
Pair share. It won't accept pair.
It won't?
Really? Oh, anyway.
If this kind of a word cloud doesn't work well for you,
Did we bring up that website?
the Wordle.
Oh, I don't think we did on my computer.
Oh.
Just pressed off on my computer. That would be really good.
This is her cute daughter. She
She came to visit me in my office, and you know what happens when kids start playing on their computers? She's 21 years old, but she's still messing with my stuff.
Can you see how to use something like Febuary in your class?
I don't know why it's not showing what's on my computer.
Our students have to buy clickers. Oh, I heard that in your department, they do. Ours just buy phones, and they have them anyway.
Well, I don't know why it's
Cheaper
not
for
showing
us.
over there.
And for them.
Yeah.
But Wordle.com,
I think that will come up later.
what?
That will come up later when we do it.
Wordle.net.
I think it's not.
Wordle.net.
This is too. That's a good one.
You can copy stuff and then paste it into Wordle.net and it will make a word cloud. This, I don't know why it's not showing over there. It shows a word cloud where they get larger if more people say them. Now I'm a little worried about our video. I may go double check on that, Gary. Oh, look, no, it got bigger. Maybe it took a little while before it did.
Ah, popped it. We've got popped twice even. We've got popped quiz twice.
Maybe it's because one of them is
yeah,
pop, and
quotation
one of them is
mark.
pop.
Oh, okay. All right. So another option for us to learn, to use some formative assessments, which really engage students instead of listening. But some of you like that. Oh, there's the Wordle.net. Click on that. I can't do it from here. And it'll show Wordle.net. We hope.
Yeah, it shows it on my computer.
It is on your computer, but not there. Interesting. Well, should we move on then?
Yes.
Okay, so here's some types of active engagement that we want to talk about. And maybe you've used them in your classes, and maybe you haven't. We have brainstorming and discussions, and I think almost most classes have some discussions that go on in your class. You can do drawing and artwork and games and manipulatives, and Kristin, get back there because your slide is next. We'll have experiments, labs, and models, and all these kinds of things. So this is a type of active engagement, but how can we use this then as a formative assessment type? So,
Jerry, back up. Could you? Not you. The
Jerry,
slide.
oh.
You are really in that realm of your brain, where when I give you a command, she physically acts on it, okay? She's a physical educator, she acts on physical commands, okay? So, let me just throw this out there.
Okay.
If your class has built-in labs, and that's where you do all of the engagement activities.
That would be totally engagement.
That's nothing but engagement, but those are on separate days. You're saying that if there was a mix of engagement throughout the lecture part, in addition to another 2-hour period where there's nothing but engagement, it works better?
Yeah, that's what all the research tells us.
Okay.
I've sat in all these classes, and they are, whoa.
What do you teach?
I teach
Exercise
exercise physiology, and sometimes I teach biomechanics.
And she knows her stuff.
And
it's cool with her.
exercise prescription classes. And so we talk about the concept, and then we spend 2 hours doing them. You know, this is what it feels like. This is what you're doing. You know, and this is how it's playing out. But it's kind of on separate days.
Maybe that works for you.
No, well, it works for me, but it may not work for them.
Well, maybe we'll have to throw in one of these things and find out. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at brainstorming and discussions. Give me one, I'm going to pick on somebody that I haven't picked on yet. And his name is Barrett.
Yes.
Tell us one discussion topic that you have your students help with in your classes.
A discussion topic.
Yeah. Or do you just talk?
Well, I try not to do that,
Okay.
but I do that a lot. A discussion topic. Today, in my intro to social work class, we were talking about sex. And one of the things that we did some brainstorming on was I had them all write down on a piece of paper something they wanted to know about sex so that I could later revisit those questions anonymously.
Great. Remember some of the discussions that you've had in your classes, and you might even ask students, was this helpful to you, was it not? Because we don't know everything there's to know. Jerry? What? Yes, Deborah.
I just tried something this last week since Valentine's Day is coming up and we don't meet this week, so we met last week. But we were talking about ethics and the analysis of ethics and the principles of ethics. And so I wrote the word Valentine on a sheet of paper and told them that was the test for the day and that was going to determine what we would speak about. But they had to write out something related to ethics and healthcare using those letters, and it really stimulated a lot of great conversation.
That is an awesome idea. Wow, cool.
And I tried it once before doing Halloween, just, you know, to bring in some festive,
Right.
fun part
That is
of
a
the
cool
class.
idea. I hope you're taking notes because these are really good ideas. Thank you. Okay, how about drawing and artwork? Would you click on that? I asked my students to draw a concept, and this is what they drew. And it makes sense to them, and I had to really stretch to figure it out, but it had something to do with knowledge and skills, the skills of lifting and
Muscle memory.
it applied to them, they figured it out, so now when I ask them, please tell me about standard 2, they're thinking, oh, that picture, I know all about the picture, and it brings back to their memory standard 2, which was, and I can't remember what it is now. Is there another?
And this student, this was about
This.
planning according to the core.
Doing what? I'm sorry.
She actually raises cows.
Uh-huh.
She's from Colville, and she has cows. And so here we have.
What did she draw? What was the topic?
It was about the whole process of the instructional planning process. So we have the core curriculum that the cow's going to eat. And then the lessons are in the head. She has ear tags. I can't really read what she has on the ear tag. She's got formative assessment, assessment for learning. It's the backbone of the cow there, and the kinds of things that the cow learns are knowledge, skills and dispositions, alignments there. Assessment of learning is the outcome measure. Summative assessment then.
But to that student, okay? Okay, you can play games. I have a colleague that's in my office and he plays Jeopardy and he has all of his test questions or test review up there and they play Jeopardy and it's cool to watch that happen, but maybe you've even used it. You can just Google Jeopardy and you can download it.
All kinds of
It's really
templates,
fun.
yeah.
Did you bring your manipulatives?
I forgot. I didn't bring in our math methods class. We use manipulatives all the time to help children make math concepts more concrete, so that they can have something to connect the abstract concept to that they've been able to touch and feel and move and so
I'm
forth.
sorry, because those were cool manipulatives. I'm sorry, you didn't bring those.
Experiments, labs, models. Here's the video that. Okay,
Love work.
make it so.
We got-
Click on that thing and make it so it's in there. Or should I-
Make it so.
Cherry, will we have access to this PowerPoint? Did we just request it, or is it going to be on the teaching and learning forum site?
We'll put it on our site.
That's-
She'll send it to us.
But that is not the video, but it's still a cute girl.
Oh, it's looking there.
Okay, just only once a week.
Yes, please.
Oh, thanks, Molly. I can put my credit cards right there.
Oh.
Oh, good. We're still friends.
Oh, you're the man. Thanks. It's always good to have a tech guy know where they are.
Make that bigger.
Yep.
One way that I like to collect formative assessments is using my end of class stoplight method. Before you leave, I'm going to quickly give you a sticky note. I want you to either write one of these three things. Students use a Post-it note to, first of all, write either what they learned and post it on the green light, what questions they considered, post it on the yellow light. Did you consider an idea, a question? Or you're going to tell me what you considered. And oftentimes the most important is anything stopped their learning during class and put that on the red light. Really helps me understand not only what went well during class, but also what I need to do to prepare for the next day.
Does anybody use that?
Teaching Channel, by the way, has amazing videos about teaching. That I teach about teaching, so Oh, it says PowerPoint is restarting.
What did you say manipulatives are?
Things that you move with you use your hands with.
Oh, so the stoplight is.
Yeah,
is
anything that you touch and feel and move to understand a more abstract concept.
Okay.
And we use them a lot in math, especially elementary level math, and I teach how to teach elementary math. So I have a whole closet full of blocks and cubes and circles and all kinds of things.
And you have a skeleton in your lab.
I also have magnets. They move.
I mean, I can see where manipulatives are extremely useful in my field, in your field, but what manipulatives can you use in English or nursing?
In nursing, we have
Nursing
all of
has
our
tons.
skills, our
Oh,
skill
of
folks, so any
course.
of the equipment that we
Right.
can have them touch or
Oh,
see, it probably is.
Sylvie, what do you use in English? What's a manipulative in that field?
I've done
Really?
where I put parts of speech on slips of paper
Oh.
to pull them out of the
Oh.
bag and make.
That's
sentence
cool.
structures.
Good. Did you have your hand up, Ron? No, it's okay.
She's nursing.
Okay,
Anybody
the
else
guy
got cool
like
ideas?
changed this and now it's.
Do you want me to call him back?
We need to like go to two screens.
What?
I don't know what I do. Sometimes I have them cut their paper, or cut the introduction off and cut the conclusion off. And then we make, it's not really, I sort of remember. Anyway, then they have to mix them up and then we have to try to find, they can
That's
match
cool.
the intro with the conclusion.
Right. I like that.
I do have to
That's
use
a
their
good
hands.
idea. All right.
You know,
What's
when I teach comp theory, we talk about organizational culture in one of the theories, and so I've had I bring in building blocks and have them build the culture of Weber State. And I'll tell you what, I need to get the president in there to see what
What
those
students
students think. It's
That's
amazing.
fascinating.
It's amazing.
Now they do it with blocks?
Yeah, with building blocks.
Huh.
Clever. I saw another hand somewhere, but I don't know where it was. Discovery toys.
I'm sorry.
I think it was me, Jerry.
Go ahead.
I
Deborah.
teach information technologies and computer literacy for healthcare. And so one thing we do is we actually take images of the various components of the hardware, the software, the networking, and put them on a piece of paper. We've laminated them so we can use them over and over. And they have to build a nurse's informatics station or whatever application it might be, a home health where they don't actually stay in the office, and how all these interconnect, and
That's cool.
use dotted lines for wireless and
Isn't
solid
that
lines for
awesome?
wired.
We can have manipulatives in every one of our disciplines if we're creative enough. That's cool. And we
Sherry, we need to go fast.
Okay, let's go fast. Go.
So some of the different things, activities, active engagement strategies we can use for formative assessment is role play, drama, act things out, music, rhyme, rhythm, have students, put something to rhythm, dance. Let's see if this is gonna work. Last time I tried to make something like this work, it ended up making a big
I asked my
mess.
students to find some way of remembering a particular concept, and this one was, they had to remember movement patterns, and the other part was, so they came up with it on their own, in little groups of 3, and we may or may not see it. But it was, oh, there it is. It was their decision. This is how they're gonna remember movement patterns. And so they stood up in front of the class and did the Macarena with the Teletubbies in the background. But everybody in the class, I'm here to tell you, remembers about movement patterns. Nobody will forget that for their display. But that was their choice. That's how they engaged their learning process to never forget about movement patterns. Thank you, Kristin. I'm glad it worked this time. Oh, now what?
It's whether or not it goes back. Okay, keep talking about. I really need to go get the guy again. Well, he said he changed it to like
Terry, what's on your mind?
screens.
Now, I'm in early childhood education, so obviously a lot of what I do, both with children and with my college-age students, is very active. But one of the things that really impressed me is that at the beginning of the semester, like many of us do, I have them fill out a student information sheet, just, you know. And one of the questions I ask is, because this is a teaching course, is describe an early learning experience. And so they wrote about these early learning experiences. And I was amazed because every one of these early learning experiences that my students described before our course even started, they had to do with, well, it was something that I was really curious about or interested in. It was hands-on. It was out of the classroom. It was practical. I could use it. It was somebody who really took a personal interest in me. It was one-on-one, and it was just amazing because the theme ran through all of these student responses, and that those were the things that they remembered. And most of them were not early learning like 4-year-olds. Most of them were remembering things from, upper elementary kinds of things, but all of it.
Related to that, I taught junior high math for a number of years, and I was at a grocery store, and my checker was one of my former students. She was probably 30 at the time when she was in junior high. When I taught her, she was 12. And she said, "Mrs. Hadley, do you remember that song you taught us to learn mean, median, and mode?" She's checking my groceries. And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, the other day I got it stuck in my head, and I could not get it out of my head." And I'm thinking, 18 years ago, I taught her a song about mean, median, and mode, and she is still remembering it today. Another thing I used to do teaching math.
Can you sing that now?
Yes. Mean, the average mode, most often range, subtract the smallest from the largest, median, the middle number when it's lined up from the greatest to the least. I sang it a lot of times.
Wow, okay.
And a little slower than that. Another thing I did is had them act out family of graphs and transformations of families of graphs. So this is a y equals x squared graph. This is a y equals the absolute value of x graph. This is a y equals x cubed graph. And then they have to transform them by moving sideways or up or down or having go steeper or wider. So they're using their bodies to help them remember.
Debates, newspaper headlines, group pretests, all these kinds of things. So ask them to consolidate. What did you learn in the last half an hour in a 5-word headline? And write it on a whiteboard, or write it on a piece of paper, or share it with your neighbor. And that worked well. We're not going to show you though because we're going fast.
I know we are going fast too.
If you've taught something, have them apply it immediately. If you've taught, for instance, we teach them about how to write learning objectives, and then I give them pieces of learning objectives and say, now put them together and make a learning objective. Don't wait till next week, because they will have forgotten. It has to be immediate for them to engage and remember that. Oh, I love this one. How my students write their own test questions and the answers, and then, of course, I supplement that on the real thing.
So then here's some of the examples. Here are the sample newspaper headlines. A matching, so this is where they could apply it immediately. So you've taught about learning objectives. Now they're going to match the core to what the learning objective would be. A matrix where you fill in what you know about a particular model, this was Jerry going over some different curriculum models.
And this is what I thought you were talking about, the turn and tell.
Oh yeah, it is pair share. But they call it a lot of times turn and talk nowadays.
Okay.
Say turn and talk. Okay, now this is turn and talk. So find someone in here whose birthday is the same month as you, or adjacent months. That means you have to stand up and go and ask people. Now you can put your fingers up right now. Find someone that has a birthday the same month or adjacent month.
August.
Oh, well, I'm July. She's June.
Nice, we're almost.
Well, we're adjacent.
Oh, over here, I think Carla's at 7.
September.
9. She's a 9.
So,
So
you guys are September, I'm August.
I'm an actual
that's close enough.
I'm August.
June?
Okay, and if you don't have a
For
partner,
Junes.
get a partner right now, regardless of your birthday.
Okay, 5, 4, 3,
November.
2,
We're good.
we're 1.
We're
But you
close
don't want
enough.
to spend so much time getting partners that that takes up a lot of the time that you want to spend having students to talk. I pre-arrange partners at the beginning of the semester. I have 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12, 11, 12, and 1, and they're different size groups. So I know if I want pairs, I say, okay, get your 8 o'clock partner or your 9 o'clock partner. If I want 3s, I do 9s, 10s, and 11s. If I want groups of 4, I do the 12s and 1 o'clock partners. And they're already established, and they just say, oh, this is my group, and they go to it.
Okay, ready? Got your partners? Here we go. Share one of the strategies you think you could use with students for a formative assessment.
Like when we use the,
With your partners.
Therapy.
Oh, you think we use it?
Okay, not both share, switch, so the other person can share.
Yeah, one of the things I've tried to do this semester is everyone has quiz on the meeting, and a significant number of students miss the
Okay, next partner, new partner. Has to be somebody different who has similar shoes to you. So look around, find someone who has similar shoes.
We're brown.
Pairs.
Okay, that works for me.
And give them a time limit to find their partners, like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
I'm probably closest to you.
5, 4, 3.
We're completely opposite.
It's all good.
Ready? Where, whoever you're standing next to is your partner from now on.
Okay, share a strategy you might think you would struggle to use and why.
I guess you could see how you're tearing off pieces.
Practice exercise. That's not quite the same.
You can get manipulated like they were talking about words.
I'm just trying to see all that.
No,
I didn't take all the notes, so I'm like.
It's a little bit more abstract and creative.
I know my last had them looking groups as my was 2 weeks later.
I don't think they were.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason I want to go
But it makes them people
I
think
can't
about
justify the university.
I'd have to really think
No,
about
they're not huge. They range from 5 to
it's more limited by me.
Okay, since you're already up, we're going to do one more formative assessment, another human Likert scale. So the first question is, I feel confident in trying an active formative assessment. I feel like you could go back to your class and try one. Strongly agree and strongly disagree.
I see big changes. Great. Okay.
Next question. I'm willing to try adding formative assessment to an active learning activity next week.
Whoa. That's awesome. Read for us, Kristin.
Active formative assessment is important for adult learners.
Yeah.
Adult people still like to get involved in this. Bob?
I have a question that arose the first time we did this, and now it's coming up again. Active formative assessment
Meaning,
versus formative assessment. I mean, is there really a difference? How can you have formative assessment that isn't active?
well, I guess that's kind
I mean,
of true.
that was what's kind of confusing me
Yeah.
initially. It's like, I know I do formative assessment, but it sounds like active formative assessment is just
I
formative
would almost
assessment.
call my pop quiz at the end of the time when they're just writing out that a formative assessment, because it's not the unit exam.
Yeah, but
And that's not active.
active if you use more than just paper and pencil, maybe.
Really?
You know, try to get it. I think if you can get students standing up and at least once in the class, you know, there's different
I
brain
think there's a
cells being used.
continuum of active.
Right.
Exactly. Maybe just
Like that in
Okay, good point.
Next question. Adult learners will positively respond for active formative assessment.
Oh, yeah. Probably most. There may be some.
Not initially, but.
That's true.
But they'll get used to it.
And sometimes they do, they like
fantastic.
Yeah,
And some
exactly.
don't respond
Yeah.
positively.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
what do you
that's
think?
true.
I've had on a couple of assessments where some of those active learning processes, they interpret as games, and they say, I'm not paid to go to school to play games. I mean, I know who the student is, and they had some issues with it, but, and they were also foreign students who probably, it was a very foreign concept to them. So, you know, I guess sometimes it depends on their perception of whether it's really a game or is there a point to it, although.
And there needs to be a reason why you're doing
Yeah.
it.
And
But the
so when
majority
you
of the
finish it,
students
you,
found the point.
you finish with, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And let them reason to themselves, why are we doing this? Who's it helping? Is it helping me? Is it helping you? Is it helping each other? If they can see the reason behind it, they'll typically buy in, unless they're foreigners and then
I think that's the key, and that's why I made that comment.
Yeah, making sure that the connection between the activity is clear and the content is clear. You can't just do an activity and assume that students will make the connection. I remember once I was at home, and I have math manipulatives at home because that's what I do. And I had a geo board, and my son, who was in junior high school at the time, said, "Oh, I remember geo boards in elementary. They were so fun." I said, "Well, what did you do with them?" "Awesome." He's going to tell me about finding area of parallelograms and stuff. He goes, "We played with it." And that was it. To him, they played with them. There wasn't ever that explicit link between, we're using this to discover properties of formulas of geometric shapes. So you have to make that link explicit. And, oh, this is the last one.
Oh, yeah.
There's our references, and thanks very much.
Are these out?